Hi, my name is Nikki Allison, and I'm sharing my PBL unit with you today. I've always enjoyed problem-based tasks as part of my instruction. However, this is the first unit that I've taught where I've constructed this type of project-based learning that encompasses such a long period of time. PBL is a way of teaching in which students are gaining knowledge and skills by working on an overlying project for an extended period of time. Students are really applying those skills that they learn in a class in a real way to solve a problem or to reach a goal. So my unit is called the Thanksgiving Menu, and I chose to create this unit because decimals are such an important part of everyday life. Whether you're buying gas, groceries, paying bills, shopping, or planning an event, money's going to be involved, and therefore decimals are involved. The skills that this project encompasses are just really some of those power standards that students really need to master to be successful in their middle school years. And in their high school years, and then just in life in general. If you can't do some simple decimal computations, you're really going to struggle with your budgeting and your planning. The goal of the project for Thanksgiving Menu is, or the idea is, that teams are competing against one another to prepare the most appealing menu for the school's Thanksgiving lunch. The goal is to have the most appealing menu as well as the best price. So students really have to create their menu with cost in mind, and they're going to have to calculate cost per person, cost per class, if it's about 25 students in class, cost per grade level, thinking there's about 100 students in a grade, and cost for the entire school, which would be approximately 500 students. Students are then going to present their menus to a group of people, including the principal, the cafeteria manager, the public's representative for our school, and the PTO president at the end of the unit. Their presentations need to address how they figured out servings, how they calculated servings, how much of each item they were going to buy, and then the cost of those items, as well as the cost for each of the scenarios, whether they're serving one person, 25 people, 100 people, or 500 people. And then, of course, they need to include any discounts they received by couponing or those types of things. The idea is that the winning menu would be adopted for the school's Thanksgiving lunch. At our school, Thanksgiving lunch is really a community event. We tend to have the majority of our parents show up. We have retired teachers show up. We have community members show up from the school board or from the local fire department. So it's a real big deal at our school. Students look forward to it every year as a time where their parents are going to get to come and eat with them. So I think being responsible for the menu that's served would be a big deal for them. The timeline of this project assumes a 90-minute class period over a 4-week period of time, with presentations occurring the following week, on the 5th week. So within each week of this timeline, students are going to have instructional days, and then they're going to have work days. So the instructional days would be times where they're gaining tools for their toolbox. And then the group work days are days where they're going to be able to apply those skills to their project as a collaborative group. The big mathematical standard that's addressed is the Common Core standard to add, subtract, multiply, and divide decimals. So basically all decimal computation is involved in this project, along with estimation skills, which are not a Common Core standard but are a life skill, and they are addressed, and they are a state an SPI at this current time. But the big Common Core skill is to add, subtract, multiply, and divide decimals, which is basically all decimal computation. It also addresses standards for mathematical practices, which the state of Tennessee has adopted. So it addresses mathematical practices 1, 2, 3, and 6. 1 is make sense of problems and persevere in solving them. So students are really going to apply this practice for all of the instructional tasks they do throughout the week, as well as the overall project that they'll be working to complete. Mathematical practice 2 is reasoning abstractly and quantitatively. So that is seen in their mathematical tasks. They're constantly being asked to estimate to know whether or not their practical answers are reasonable. So you have the estimation, and then you have the actual practical answers that they're going to be using computation to find. And then constructing viable arguments and critiquing the reasoning of others is a big one. Whenever they work in collaborative groups, the group members are going to have to have arguments for why their choices are better, or why their answers are correct, or why their reasoning is correct as opposed to their group members. And then they're going to have to critique their group members and think, is that the best choice? Is that the best buy? Is that the best menu option? So there's going to be a lot of that in the daily instructional tasks, as well as the big group activity for this unit. And then attending to precision. This is decimal computation, so precision matters, and precise answers do matter in all of their tasks. The ISTE standards that are addressed are many, because the entire unit, students are relying on technology to collect their information and to make decisions, and to present their information and to collaborate with one another. So really technology is very involved in this unit. As far as creativity and innovation goes, they're going to create original works. So this is seen when by the student's choice and students creating their own presentations within the collaborative group activities and the Thanksgiving menu project. Communication and collaboration is used. Students are really going to be using Edmodo as a communication tool and as a publishing platform. So they're going to be able to publish their findings on Edmodo to share with their classmates and with one another in their collaborative groups. They're going to be contributing to project teams and producing original works and solving problems. Also, there are instructional tasks many days during the week, and then there, of course, is the big Thanksgiving menu project as well. They're going to be researching and using the information they find in a fluid manner. So they're going to be asked to locate information, organize that information, analyze information on a daily basis, and for the Thanksgiving menu project. They're going to be asked to evaluate and select information sources and tools based on what's appropriate for that task. So if I'm asking them to go find items that are sold by the foot, they have some decisions to make about what kind of website am I going to go to find items that are sold by the foot. What would make sense, and then how am I going to present this to my classmates. So that will also be seen throughout the instructional tasks, as well as the Thanksgiving menu project. Processing data and reporting results, that's going to be a regular occurrence when they're using the internet to find information, and then reporting what they find through Edmodo to their classmates. Critical thinking, problem solving, and decision making is going to be a big one. So they're going to be doing this when they're in their groups and they're developing their to-do lists, and they're developing their questions and problems that need to be answered to complete their overall task of the Thanksgiving menu. They're going to be planning and managing activities to develop their solutions or complete their projects. So they're really going to be self-monitoring them, and hopefully the 4 jobs within the groups will help them self-monitor. They're going to need to understand and use technology systems to be able to do this, since so much of the instructional tasks require them to be online and be finding information. They're going to really have to understand how to use the iPad and how to use the computer to seek out the information they need. And then they're going to need to be able to select and use the applications effectively. They're going to need to know when Keynote's appropriate, when's it appropriate to use Edmodo as a communication tool, when would Padlet be an appropriate tool to use, and then what would be appropriate to as a presentation tool at the end of the unit. So when we look at the schedule, it's divided into 4 weeks, and as you can see in week 1, the very first day, of course, we're just going to be setting up the project. We're going to be assigning groups. We're going to be determining groups or determining jobs within each group. We're going to be developing a rubric as a class, and we're going to be developing timelines. Now that'll happen within the group with guidance. We'll really talk about from group to group. Okay, you have 4 weeks. Every Friday for sure is going to be a work day. What is your expectation for one another on Friday? Do you expect everybody to come with information to add to the presentation? Do you expect for everybody to come with ideas and then you're going to research those ideas? What's your goal for this Friday? What's your goal for next Friday? And so forth, and really help them lay out a timeline of events that are going to help them accomplish their task. Tuesday and Wednesday, you see, are set aside for instructional days. So they're going to be receiving some mini lessons on estimating sums and differences, as well as finding decimal sums and differences. And then they're going to have group activities on both of those days, which are my instructional tasks. So on Tuesday, they're going to have a data table, and within that data table, it's going to basically just be a calendar for the week, breakfast, lunch, and dinner for a week. And they're going to have to really estimate, plan a weekly grocery list and estimate the cost of that weekly grocery list within their group. And they're going to be asked to take a picture of it and post it on Edmodo and share that with the class. And then on Wednesday, a similar activity. We'll have a mini lesson on finding decimal sums and differences. This day, we're going to invite a Publix representative to come and speak to the class about how to plan a meal and how important couponing is. The activity that day is similar. They're going to be buying weekly groceries. They'll have a budget of $150, and they may choose to use coupons, but their goal is to stay within that $150 limit. So they're really going to have to use a little of their estimation skills as well as their addition and subtraction skills. And then you can see Thursday's an independent assessment, and you can see what the assessment will be. It's called Let's Go Shopping, and students will receive a $200 budget, and they'll use online tools or paper catalogs to shop for items of their choice. They must spend $195.25. So that's what's going to make this assessment a little more difficult. They're really going to have to use some estimation to keep a ongoing tally and know about what do I need to spend, about what do we have left to spend. And so that'll be their independent assessment for the week. And then, of course, Friday would be a group work day where students should be finalizing a menu or using online tools to get ideas of prices and those kinds of things. For week 2, you can see the overwhelming skill for week 2 is multiplying. So if we look at Monday, students are going to be working on multiplying by powers of 10 and in the hopes of exploring what happens when we multiply by tens, hundreds, thousands, and notice that pattern. And then we're going to hopefully apply that pattern within their groups. The activity is called What Can I Buy by the Foot? So they're going to be doing some searching online for items you can buy by the foot. So they may find themselves at a Home Depot or Lowe's buying chain by the foot or rope by the foot or other items you could buy by the foot. And they need to find the cost for 10 feet of that item, 100 feet of that item, and 1,000 feet of that item, and so on. And again, they'll share these findings with their class, possibly through Edmodo if time doesn't permit during class. Tuesday, the objective would be estimating costs, and when we say that, we're talking about products, but there would also possibly be some addition there. The activity for this day is called Buying Items by the Pound. So they'll find items online at grocery stores that are purchased by the pound, and then they'll calculate the costs of that item if I buy 4 pounds, if I buy 8 pounds, and if I buy 12 pounds. And again, this is something they will share with the class if time permits, or they will post a picture of their table on Edmodo for students to see. Wednesday, multiplying decimals and whole numbers. The activity here is called buying many of the same. So not only will students estimate the cost of buying multiple of the same item, but they'll find the exact cost of buying multiples of the same item. And then Thursday, I was planning on having a guest speaker, possibly a caterer, to help the students figure out how to determine portions and how to plan for portions. And then in a Thanksgiving meal, how do you know how much turkey to buy for your number of people coming? How do you know how many potatoes to buy for the number of people? Just to give them an idea of how to figure out how much of each item they're going to need when planning for their Thanksgiving meal. And then, of course, Friday is another work day where hopefully students are determining how many of each items that they're going to need in order to feed each person, or to feed 25 people, 100 people, or 500 people. Week 3, you can see that we're kind of completing the multiplying portion and going on into division. So on Monday, we have our last multiplying activity, which is multiplying decimals by decimals. The activity is called buying by the pound, and we're looking at times when the pound may not be a whole number, like if you buy produce or if you're buying meat from the deli, for example. So students are going to be given a table of items, and they're going to be asked to estimate the cost of the item, find the exact amount, and then find the total cost. So now they're going to see that sometimes the exact amount does not make sense, because some of these answers, or all of these answers, may go into the thousandths place. And when we're dealing with money, the thousandths place does not make sense. So then they're going to be asked to find what's the practical cost. And they're going to be using some rounding to give the practical costs of some of those items. On Tuesday, we're going to have an individual assessment over all the multiplying, addition, subtraction skills. So you can see there's a task that consists of 3 college roommates having X amount of dollars each. They want to go shopping at Walmart. There's a table that shows all of the items these roommates want to buy, and some of them are multiple items, multiple of the same item, which would be multiplying decimal by a whole number, and some of them are buying multiple pounds of an item, which gives us that decimal times decimal scenario. And the question the kids are trying to solve is, do they have enough money to purchase all the items they want? If so, how much extra money do they have? If not, how much more money do they need to be able to purchase everything on their list? On Wednesday, we move into division, and the first thing we're looking at is dividing by powers of 10. So we're looking at that pattern. What happens to the decimal point, or is there something that's happening when we divide by 10, when we divide by 100, when we divide by 1,000? And then with a partner, they're going to complete an activity called price per pound, where I'll give them some items, how many pounds of those items I bought, which would either be 10, 100, or 1,000 pounds, and the cost, and they'll have to determine the cost per 1 pound. So if I bought 10 pounds of the item and this was the cost, how much did just 1 pound of the item cost? And they're going to be using that generalization that they hopefully got from the instruction to figure those costs. And then Thursday, we're going to be looking at estimating quotients. So the activity here is called estimating driving time. So students are going to use MapQuest to find 5 places in Tennessee they'd like to visit for Thanksgiving. And then they're going to estimate how long it would take for them to travel there in a car if they were going 58 miles per hour. So of course they're going to be estimating, so they'll be using some rounding or compatible numbers to find those driving times. On Friday, again, we have another work day, and hopefully at this point students know what items they want to purchase, and they're working on how much of each item they need to purchase and the total cost of each item, and they're starting to think about cost per person, cost per 25, per 100, per 500 people. And then the final week, we finish up decimal division, and the rest of the week is pretty much work day. So if we look at Monday, we're going to focus on dividing decimals by whole numbers, and we have an activity called splitting the bill. So students are going to go online in groups, and they're going to plan a lunch from a local eatery that they'd like to order lunch from. And so, of course, that place would need an online menu. And then students are going to plan their meal, and then they're going to split that bill evenly among their group members. So they'll, in essence, be dividing a decimal by a whole number. And then on Tuesday, the goal, their objective is dividing decimals by decimals. And this activity is called the Better Buy, and students will be exploring using the internet to find the cost of the same item that's packaged in different ways at different stores. So they might look up the cost of a 6-pack of Coca-Cola at Target and find how much one can would cost in that situation and compare it to a 12-pack of Coca-Cola at Publix and see how much one can would cost in that situation to determine which is the better buy. So that's their goal in that activity. And then on Wednesday, it would be time for another individual assessment. So in this assessment, students would be given items from 2 different stores that are packaged in different ways and asked to determine which is the better buy and why. And then both Thursday and Friday would be set aside for work days to tie up loose ends in their project and really finalize their presentation. So you see, in each of the 4 weeks, there are opportunities for them to learn new skills, practice new skills through instructional tasks, and time for them to apply those skills to their collaborative group projects, as well as having a little community involvement with our guest speakers. So some of the instructional aids I used were, of course, my Envisions math textbook and the Buck Institute for Education. So the math textbook has some inquiry-based or problem-based inquiry questions that I really use to build from and to give me ideas on where to go in my lesson. The Buck Institute for Education really gave me a lot of good ideas on just what a whole lesson, what a whole unit might look like, and it reinforced the idea that there had to be some mini lessons in there to build that content knowledge. Students aren't just going to know how to multiply decimals, so it was important that I had opportunities for mini lessons and for them to explore those skills before I asked them to apply it to the overall project for this unit. So the technology that I'm depending on is the Doceri app for instruction. So during instruction, I'll use the Doceri app, and I can also record that instruction and post it on Edmodo. So if students want to access it at a later time, they can. And of course, Edmodo is a great resource for communication, not only between myself and the students, but between student and student. And then, of course, iPads and computers are used. And then my references you see are just the website for Buck Institute Education and the publisher and for the textbook. So that is an overview of my project-based unit. I did most of these activities just in my decimal unit this year, and I found that those real-life experiences and having students making some decisions in how the assignment went kept them much more involved and interested. I mean, when they got to pick the things they were going to spend their money on, they were much more interested in it than if I just gave them a list of items. So I thought those type of real life experiences were really important to keep them engaged, and I look forward to actually implementing this entire problem-based unit next year when I teach my decimal unit again. Thanks for listening.